The Minnesota Vikings are 4-0, but should we be worried? They had a 28-point lead against the Green Bay Packers and almost let it slip away, getting a 31-29 win. We're going to talk about what matters, what doesn't, what's sustainable, and what needs to honestly be a concern for the Minnesota Vikings. Strap in, we're going to talk about all of that and a little bit of preview about the New York Jets here on the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, top left corner, he is producer Dave. And Dave, Minnesota Vikings squeaked out a win yesterday, and it was weird because as much as it felt like it was in danger, it also never felt like it was in danger. It was one of those really odd games because they did get a 28-point lead. So I need to adjust my camera just a little bit. There we go. And then at the end of the day, they only won by 2 points. But the Packers, other than their first drive, never had a chance to tie or take the lead. Take the lead. They had a chance to tie after no, they never did have a chance because the Vikings scored on their second possession. Absolutely wild game. A lot of interesting takeaways. Overall, biggest takeaways for you from that game, Dave?
That the pass blocking and run blocking was superb. Overall, it just you watched it yesterday. I'm seeing clips today, and you can't ask for much better. Yeah, there was times when Darnold got hit, but it was rare. And it happens to every quarterback. You're not going to get perfection, but it was close.
No, it was. And I think I put it on Twitter that Darnold only got hit once, but I forgot that one of the sacks actually was credited to Darnold and not an offensive lineman. And I think it was the Keyshawn Nixon sack because one sack was credited to Blake Brandel, and I think that was the Quay Walker blitz. And the one sack was, I think, an overload blitz where the Vikings just didn't have enough blockers. And therefore, that pressure's on Darnold because he needs to be able to see that, get the hot read out, and that would have prevented the strip sack. Now, Darnold was trying to throw the football in the strip sack, but too little, too late. You got to be able to sense that a little quicker. You got to be able to get it out. That's what separates the good NFL quarterbacks from the great ones. Being able to read and then take advantage of it. Now, when you kind of take a look at everything all-encompassing, Dave, really banner day, like you said, for the offensive line. Only 8 total pressures with 7 of on blockers, with 6 of them coming from the offensive line. 1 for Darisaw, 2 for Ingram, 2 for Bradbury, 1 for Brandel, and that was the sack. And I was really impressed overall. I even tweeted it during the game that I was just really impressed with the blocking. Sam Darnold had massive pockets. And I think when you go back to I want to relate it to the scouting process of Bryce Young. I think one of the things that was difficult, and somebody pointed this out yesterday about his draft process and really scouting him, was the fact that he had these massive pockets for like 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then he would escape and create, but he had pretty clean pockets to work with. And Darnold had some pretty clean pockets, not just clean, but he was able to like just sit back there comfortably, nobody within a couple yards of him, and just be able to look at the defense and be able to make reads and make throws. That's an ideal scenario and not something we expected when we would face the Green Bay Packers. Rashawn Gary is one of the higher paid edge rushers in the league, and he's had a lot of success when healthy, because he did a couple years ago have a torn ACL that ended up impacting him the next year as well. Last year, it is 17.3% pressure rate per PFF. This year, Dave, it's 3.0. And one of the reasons why it's so low is Mr. Christian Darrisaw and Mr. Brian O'Neill. Mainly Darrisaw, because I think Gary mainly does play on that right side of the defense. But you have those guys. And then you have Kenny Clark, who has been a Vikings destroyer over the course of time. And the Packers just gave him this massive extension. They didn't even really give him a lot to work with. They honestly treated him like a rotational player. They kind of tried to keep him fresh, and he wasn't really doing much on the interior. The Vikings kind of held him at bay, and there's been a lot of discussion about the interior offensive line on social media, on other shows and podcasts, other writers. I've been steadfast in that this offensive line is good to great, especially compared to the rest of the units in the National Football League, because I don't think a lot of people realize how bad offensive line play is across the league. We have elite tackles and we have solid interior play. Now, the solid interior play can be a little volatile. You can have rough games like they did against Dexter Lawrence, who's arguably the second best defensive lineman in the National Football League. You can get whipped by those guys. But here's the thing. Pretty much everybody gets whipped by those guys. So you feel a little bit better about yourself. It's about getting whipped by people you're not supposed to get whipped by. That's when it becomes a problem. And the Vikings haven't let that become a problem. The Texans did have some intriguing stunts and pass rush plans for their front four, which created a lot of havoc, especially from Danielle Hunter and Willie Anderson Jr. And that's one of the reasons why Blake Brandel allowed his first pressure of the year. And he still only has 2 this season, which is honestly pretty impressive. And it's been a really, really good group so far. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're elite, but I think they're starting to get to a point where we can consider them consistently good with great upside. I think that's a fair statement. Now, Ed Ingram's always going to be a player that's, for lack of a better term, controversial. There was the pre-draft stuff. We're not going to discuss the pre-draft stuff. Not saying anything to condone or anything. It just is what it is. There's no use in rehashing it. If you want to learn about the pre-draft stuff, you can go ahead and do a Google search. And then, so I think some of that, but also when it just comes to his on-field play, Dave, his rookie year, I think, has stood too much in people's heads. They let him fail on the field. And there are different ways when it comes to development. If you remember your first job, a lot of people's first job is in the restaurant business or retail. And one of the things I believe in is when you give people the tools, let them go through trial by fire. But also when they start to fail, jump in and help. Because there's nothing like learning on the fly and try to figure out the little things. Try to figure out that trial by fire, because you learn by failure. You learn by doing. And I've always believed in that approach, especially when I was in the restaurant business, because you figure out how to do it yourself. And I think they let Ingram do that. And I think they had the ability to let him do that because they trusted Bradbury enough. They had Brian O'Neill next to him. They're like, okay, we have our one weakness on the offensive line, and that's going to be right guard. We're going to have to try and mitigate it at times, but he's going to be better for it long term. That's why he got more reps last preseason, and that's why he got reps this preseason. They want to keep getting him reps because, Dave, year 3 and 4 is when those offensive linemen truly start to blossom and become what they're going to be. And then you pair that with his play style, which in itself is volatile because he plays right guard like Mike Tyson. He wants to punch you out. And if he misses that punch, he can stumble and then he gets beat. And that is something that a lot of people don't like. And if you don't prefer his style, that's okay. But it's the other things. It's how he just destroys people in the run game. He is a capable pass protector. He had a pass protection grade in the 60s. He only allowed 2 pressures, which I don't know which ones they were, but he was not credited with the sack. And I thought he held up really well, just like the rest of the offensive line did all day. And that's why I always challenge people on the show, evolve your opinion based on new information. If that new information changes your opinion, that's okay. It should. New information should either change or strengthen your opinion. It shouldn't be like, oh, I see this new information that says, oh, I should give this a B, but I'm going to keep giving it an A because that's my narrative. Like, no, evolve. And I think Ed Ingram has evolved quite a bit as a player. There's still some flaws and there's still some inconsistencies, but he's still in year 3. And I think considering he's only in year 3, I don't really see that as too much of an issue. And the interior of that offensive line is getting $10 million a year average annual value. The tackles with Darisaw and O'Neal are getting 44. $54 million a year for your starting offensive line. I'm okay with that. And I think that they've more than proven that they're a really solid unit. And I think it's been a really big factor in the renaissance of Sam Darnold.
Oh, I agree completely on that, because he has time, and that's a wonderful thing.
No, absolutely. It's a wonderful thing, Dave. And I think Sam Darnold, when you take a look at what he's been able to do, I wrote a piece earlier today, Dave, that I think Sam Darnold deserves to win. What do you call it? Offensive Player of the Month for September. Let me read off some of these stats, and these will all correlate with the theme topic of this Packers game and kind of some of the things we learned, because we want to talk about the things from like the first 4 games and especially yesterday's game. What is sustainable and what's not, and what can we learn? I think what we learned with Sam Darnold is he's still the same guy. I think what I did appreciate, and I didn't want to like make a big stink of it, but I think Jonas misunderstood me when I talked about bozo moments. Bozo moments in the context I was speaking of was when Darnold was getting tackled and he tried to Brett Favre it. That first pass was almost an interception. That was just dumb. That, to me, that's like different. Bozo moments is like Will Levis this entire season. You've seen those memes, right? Where Will Levis, like that interception, just like, and not even trying to go tackle the guy, just like on his knees, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just threw that. Like those kind of bozo moments. He didn't have one. There was an opportunity in that fourth quarter when they changed the play, and instead of handing the ball off to Aaron Jones, there's a miscommunication. He just turned around and dropped. Didn't try to be a hero. Didn't try to make a BS play and try to do backyard bullshit. Nope. He's just like, okay, I'm going to go down. And like that evolution, I thought was really good to see. He did have 3 turnover-worthy plays, one of which was that first interception, or missed interception, I'm sure. One of which was the interception, and I don't recall offhand what the third one might be. I'm not 100% sure.
The interception that shouldn't have been an interception.
No, that's what I called it, because there was that one, the missed interception, but there was a third one. My brain isn't clicking what the third one was. But I'm sure it'll click once I get to the film. Dave, listen to some of these stats. Sam Darnold leads the NFL in these categories. 11 touchdown passes, 118.9 passer rating, 97-yard longest pass, 9.59 adjusted yards per attempt, and 10.4% of his attempts are touchdowns. He also is second in yards per attempt unadjusted at 8.8, third in QBR at 73.6, fourth in net yards per attempt at 7.49, fourth in yards per completion at 12.8, seventh in passing yards at 932, and tied for 10th in completion percentage at 68.9. Considering you look at some of these other metrics, yards per attempt, 8.8, yards per completion, 12.8. He's throwing the ball down the field, so having a slightly smaller completion percentage is okay. It is still in the high 60s. Remember something to remember. Dante Culpepper in 2004 set an NFL record. I think it was a 71.2 completion percentage. Like, that's how things have gone so far. And I think it's great. I think it's great that we're seeing that kind of play from Darnold. And my camera We are going to blame Dave for the camera issues. You know why we're going to blame Dave? Because he bought the cameras, baby. No, Dave, I've been really impressed with Darnold. I think I'm still on the train where, hey, I don't think we can extend him, at least right now. I don't think it's a good idea to extend him. I also don't think it's a bad idea to keep it on the table. Because if he continues this and he keeps going with this path, why wouldn't you? You're talking about a team that's 4-0, that they are the first team in the Super Bowl era, Dave. And this is what blows my mind. That has won their first 4 games while never being more than a 1-point favorite. They were 1-point favorites in New York against the Giants, which, okay, completely unknown Vikings team. You're going on the road, New York, a rabid fan base for the Giants. Okay, understandable. Then they were 5.5-point dogs against the 49ers. Then they were 2.5-point dogs against the Texans. And then they were, 1.5-point dogs. And then they were 2.5-point dogs against the Packers. The Packers one means, hey, on a neutral field, it's even. On the Vikings home turf, they would have been favored. So, okay, that's fine. And something to remember with Vegas, very rarely do they take a 1-game sample size and completely shift their odds. The only way they would do that is injuries or suspensions, players not playing. Patrick Mahomes is worth an entire touchdown on the betting line. That was a study done last year by, I can't remember who did it. It might have been Ben Fox on Twitter, who's in the gambling industry. I think at one point he worked for ESPN. Like he's a great follow if you like betting stuff, because he's got all kinds of really fun data that he shares. That, like, some guys are just worth a lot. Justin Jefferson is worth like almost 1.7 points behind only Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce when that study was done. Like, guys can impact the betting lines. Singular performances don't, because they want sample size. They want data. So the Vikings just like whipping up on the 49ers is not going to shift the line that much. Maybe a point. Be like, okay, we saw a win against the Giants. We saw you beat the 49ers rather convincingly. Do it again. So they did it again, and they beat the Texans even more convincingly. So now they went into Green Bay. They probably would have been like 5.5, 6-point dogs. No, they were 2.5-point dogs, which means they are viewed equals to the Packers on a neutral field. And then they went and honestly beat the piss out of the Packers. And some of it was, okay, you had some warts, the muffed punt, which is very funny. We'll talk about some of the play calling issues, because I think play calling factors in to that muff punt. We'll explain why here in a little bit. But you had the turnovers. I agree with the Jalen Naylor jet sweep. I thought that was a good play call. Naylor slipped. If he just has one extra cleat in the ground, that's a first down and it's game over. A field goal does you almost nothing. It puts you up 12. You know what a first down gets you? The ability to drown the clock. And that's the end of the game. I would trust my team to get a 4th and 1 in that situation. And plus, if you fail, guess what? They still have to score twice. And that's what ended up happening. So you had some warts. You had that interception, which wasn't, and some play calling issues. But overall, this was a butt whooping, Dave. This was an absolute butt whooping. And I want to say thank you to Packers Media for congratulating us on our Super Bowl win. It was great to finally get that trophy. And we can't wait to collect it once again on December 29th. And then again in February. It's going to be really fun. 3 Super Bowls in 1 year. Who would have thought? Maybe 4 if the Packers decide to come to US Bank for the playoffs. We'll see. But overall, Dave, a really, really interesting game. Before we kind of move on, do you have any overarching thoughts on Sam Darnold, his performance? Because I thought it was interesting. Now, PFF grades are not gospel. And if you've listened to this program before, 1, we greatly appreciate you. 2, you know how I feel about singular data sets. I don't like it. I like to use it as a reference point. I like to use it to cross-reference with other data sets, including the eye test. Because when it comes to watching the film, the eye test matters a lot. So I like to kind of look at all encompassing. I have not gotten to a lot of the film yet. I was dealing with some dog issues. And that's going to come tonight and tomorrow morning. But Dave, when we're looking at Darnold, 45.5 PFF grade, which is weird. How comfortable are you right now with him?
I'm fine with Darnold. I'm not fine with PFF. PFF so far this season has demonstrated that they're way out there. Whether it be Darnold in this game or Ed Ingram on that one game where both you and I watched the tape and said, this is way wrong. They've had a brain drain where the top dozen people in that company have left, and their product seems to have gone to absolute trash. Dalton was talking about how Kirk got better scores than Darnold, and Darnold had better stats than Kirk. And I'm basically disregarding him for the most part because PFF has just gone down the tubes. Now, as far as Darnold goes, I'm pleasantly surprised. I didn't think he was going to be as good as he is. But I said it from the beginning, if KOC can help Kirk Cousins and help, everybody else that's come on this team play quarterback, he can help Sam Darnold. And it is obvious the way he's playing. He is being put into positions where he can succeed, and he has. We should have blown out the Niners if we didn't fumble on the one. We beat them pretty handily. We blew out the Texans. We were blowing out, literally, the Packers. It was 28-0. That's a blowout. And then, then came the muff punt. But even after that, he stayed aggressive and in his skin, and we held on, and we won. And at no point did the win probability drop below like 80. I think it was 83 was the lowest there at the end. And we were just running out of time. For the Packers were running out of time. And there was no way they were going to catch the Vikings. But, hey, helped on that, this last drive where he ate up 6.5 minutes. Hey, I'm quite pleased. Other than the one or two plays you go, why did you do that? A game. He's been great so far. He's spotting the open receiver. He's trusting Justin Jefferson, right? If Justin's covered 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, he's trusting him. And boy, it didn't take him long to learn that. And hey, we're winning. We're 4-0, baby. We have a 57-point differential so far this season. 57 points. You remember the last time we had a 57-point differential and we're 4-0?
Yes, I do, Dave. And I'm pleased to announce it was 1998.
And that's special. And hey, last week going into this game, we were second in points allowed on the defensive side. Well, we're technically fifth right now, but we'll most likely be back up to fourth after tonight's game with Seattle and Detroit. But that's still top five. Top five on the defense, top five on the offense. Yeah. I'm pleased.
I'm going to take a moment, Dave, because I don't know if you know this. I don't know how many people know this because the news is kind of just breaking. But in a completely different vein, baseball legend Pete Rose just passed away.
No,
I know. Really sucks. He's arguably the best baseball player to ever live, but was banned from the Hall of Fame because of gambling. And they tried to reverse it because, well, he wasn't a player when he did it. He was the manager, and they would never waiver it. But that's a tough one. 4,200 some hits, just absolutely bonkers stuff. But yeah, that one kind of hurts. And you know what also hurts, guys? When you watch the show and you don't like and subscribe, it hurts us. Sorry, I had to lighten the mood. I wanted to at least share that with everybody because Pete Rose is one of the best of all time, and I really enjoyed his studio work. There is a clip of him, Frank Thomas, and Alex Rodriguez standing around in the studio talking for 7 minutes about hitting, and it was like standing around, Dave, and watching four of the best players ever just talking shop. Like, just so freaking cool. I'm gonna have to find it and send it to you because it's just awesome. But rest in peace to him. And Dikembe Mutombo passed away earlier today from cancer. My rest in peace to him. Incredible. But please like, subscribe, ring the bell, because we have some interesting times that we go live. This show is pretty consistent. Every once in a while we have to maneuver. Dave has to maneuver because of Darren's many vacations. And with Sal's new show, Scolders and Spice, still trying to get in a little bit of a groove as far as some of the timing with the technical stuff. So that is seeing a little bit of time fluctuation. That's why you want to ring the bell, because you don't want to miss anything and you want to be there when it happens. Don't worry, we're grateful for you if you watch any other time too, but you want to be there when it happens. Now,
and also, when you hear a bell ring, that means an angel gets his wings. So maybe Pete Rose gets his tonight.
Well, yeah. All right. Let's talk about this Vikings defense. I want to talk about one major thing, Dave. And I talked about this in an article I wrote this afternoon. The title was pretty simple. The Vikings defense is so good, ranking last in one major statistic doesn't matter. And you know what that statistic is, Dave? Passing yards. Minnesota Vikings are dead last in passing yards allowed. Dead last.
There's a reason.
But let me tell you, yeah. Let me tell you why they're dead last. They have held a lead for 20 plus minutes or 20 plus points for over a half of football. Think of how bonkers that is. It's insane. But by having that, it's objectively a good thing. But it also changes game script. And game script matters a ton when you're looking at defensive stats. Yeah, I would like to be first in the Vikings allowing yards. I think they're like 23rd in yards allowed. I don't care about yards allowed. You know what I care about? What does that scoreboard say? How successful is the offense when they play you? Well, they're fourth in points allowed per game. They're fifth in total points allowed. And some of that's going to be, as you said, it's going to be fixed by the time Monday Night Football is done, because we have two games. One is going on right now. I think it's Dolphins-Titans. And then we also have Lions-Seahawks, which could be a very good football game. I'm excited to watch that tonight. But because of that, we have a little bit of skewed data, which is completely fine. Like, you're not going to get perfect. What's up, Dave?
Back to Lions-Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the perfect tweet for Vikings fans. Right now, if the Seahawks win, we're 2 games up on every team in the division. 3, 2.5, if you want to call Green Bay. If the Lions win, we'll still be a game up on them, but we'll be the only undefeated team in the NFC.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Let's go Vikings, baby. But I want to talk about this defense, because one of the interesting things, and you're going to hear a lot of people talk about things like garbage time and neutral situations. Here's essentially what neutral situations are. the game is close enough to where the game script doesn't change. So if it's like a 7 to 10 point game in the third quarter, you're not going to press the panic button and just throw the football nonstop. You are going to do that if you're down 21 points in the third quarter because you don't have much time and you can't afford to waste it by running the football, which is less impactful because the average yards per pass is like around 9. The average yards per rush is between 4 and 5. That is a significant difference when you're having that conversation in terms of trying to delete a lead, trying to erase it, and trying to take it and win the football game. So game scripts significantly change when you're down big points. Well, the Vikings have held huge leads. Teams have passed 70.96% of the time. The Vikings have allowed only 300 yards rushing, 75 yards a game. One of the reasons is the Vikings are getting these huge leads and teams are not running the football. They're throwing it. Now, this is interesting. Win probability. Now, if you take a look at the Vikings win probability, it was over 90% in the second quarter. When they took that, I think it was even there when they took the 21-0 lead, but it was certainly there at 28-0. It did drop a little bit when the Packers got within 6, but the Vikings drove down and spiked it back up again. So what we're looking at is when the win probability is between 10 and 90%. So that eliminates that kind of that huge lead that's insurmountable. And by having that, you kind of look at more neutral situations. So I took a look. How is the Vikings defense performing? And these are metrics that are more analytically based. But they are first in EPA per play allowed, first in drop back EPA per play. So anytime a quarterback drops back, they're first in EPA allowed. They're second in rush EPA allowed, second in overall success rate at just 34.1% of plays are deemed successful, second in drop back success rate at 32.9%, and they're seventh in rush success rate allowed at 36%. That is when the game is still considered within reach for the team that is down. Okay. So we're talking, the 49ers are down. What was it? It ended up being 9 points middle of the fourth quarter. That you're still going to if the Niners have the ball when they drove and they got it to within 6. Okay. That you're talking about, you're within those margins. All right. Against the Texans, the first half, they were within those margins the whole time. Even into the third quarter, they were within those margins. So that's why we look at without garbage time, because that's when the defense is going to be called at its peak. That's when you're going to have Brian Flores with his tricky blitzes, his unique looks. When the game is more out of hand, you're going to revert back into more conservative defense. Why? You don't want to waste your good stuff when you're up by 28. You want to save it for when you're up by 3 and you really need a big play. So you want to put less stuff on film if you can help it. So that's some of the reasons. All right. Now, Dave, let's take a look at the metrics when there's no garbage time filter. So it includes like that Davis Mills drive. Technically, that last Jordan Love drive where he threw the ball for 90 yards to get within 2 points, technically considered garbage time. All right. These are the numbers. They dropped from first to second in EPA per play allowed by dropping a full 1/10 of a point. Fifth in success rate, they dropped 4 percentage points in success rate. They drop a full point in EPA per drop back. In drop back success rate, they drop 6.2%. In EPA per rush, they drop over a full point, or for a full 1/10 of a point, which per play is very significant. Over 10 plays, that's a full point. That's a lot of expected points added. And then in rushing success rate, they actually got better at 35.1% instead of 36. But when you take out those parameters and you're looking at how Brian Flores is calling his defense, he's not going as aggressive. He's not going in these situations where, hey, I can just play it calm, cool, and collective. You're going to have more success for the offense. And that's why when I look at those passing yards, Dave, I don't care. They're forcing teams to throw it 71% of the time. Why? Well, it's pretty simple why. they're beating the piss out of teams and they have to throw the football. Plus, they're actually good against the run. These metrics are ones that the Vikings weren't necessarily good in 2022. And one of the reasons why, your success rate is like 20th in the league, it's not sustainable. These metrics are sustainable. You're playing very good defense. So when you look at that and you're looking at a team that without garbage time is first in EPA per play allowed, in second in success rate. The only team that's better in success rate, Dave, our week 16 opponent, the Seattle Seahawks. Like, you're talking one of the best defenses in the league. They have the advanced metrics to prove it. Plus, the Vikings, Dave, are, I think, what was it that Aaron Schatz said? They were number 1 in DVOA, and they have a top 10 schedule per DVOA. I think that was it. Just think of how bonkers that is, where DVOA is essentially derived value over average. So they take what an average team would do and how much better or worse are you than average. The Vikings have a top 10 schedule per DVOA based on the opponents they played so far, and they are playing incredibly well. Now, they're going to have farts. I guarantee you they are going to shit the bed in at least 2 games this year. I would argue one of the games they shit the bed was on Sunday, where they just kept making mistakes and against the Packers, and they learned a valuable lesson without losing a football game. And I think that's really important. You always learn lessons when you lose. You rarely get to learn lessons when you win. But I think the second half of that game, especially the fourth quarter, the Vikings learned some valuable lessons that they can take and move forward with. And I think that's huge, huge, huge for this football team. And I'm really excited about that.
As well, we should be, because I think they're doing fine. And they stood up when they needed to stand up. Murphy did it with the interception and the plays being busted up. They're fine. They will get better off of this, and it's going to be worse for the rest of the league.
And I think one of the interesting things, especially about the offense, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the offense here to kind of finish out the show, because the defense, like, I'm not really worried about the defense. I do think that they need to figure out how to get home a little better, because they had a hobble Jordan Love and they put a lot of pressure on him, but they could not finish. And I think that was one of the reasons why the Packers were able to get as close as they were. And the big thing with, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, I was going to talk about the offense, wasn't I?
You were, but Chris asks, is Flores more important than KOC?
No.
And I would say, yeah, no, but they're a team, and they're working well together. And I think that's what's leading to partially the success of this team, is that they're playing. Not only did they sit down and talk and have man-to-man discussion and what sort of players they want and all sorts of things like that, they talked about how they envision working the team, and they are working it. They've got a plan. They're working the plan, and it's working, to repeat that word about 8 different times. And they're working great together. But overall, KOC's, because he's head coach and setting the tone, is the guy. But we're glad we have both, because Flores is turning this defense around.
Yeah, he really has. I think Flores has been tremendous, but none of this happens without Kevin O'Connell. And I want to talk about Kevin O'Connell and the offense, because I got a little annoyed and frustrated by some of the game script in the second half. I loved that some people were like, oh, he took his foot off the gas. He didn't take his foot off the gas at all. He tried to put a nail in the coffin. Now, one of the tough parts was, those 4th and 1s, he probably should have went for it on the 50. Well, one of the things that you can't do when you have a huge lead is give the other team slivers of hope. So if you fail on that fourth down, you give them hope and you give them a short field. Like that muffed punt, there's a reason why we're like, uh-oh. It's because it gave them a sliver of hope that, hey, we can come back. We can do this. We can make it happen. Well, they almost did. You can't give teams a sliver of hope when they're down like that. When you do, that's when things start to unravel. That's when things happen. And by failing on a fourth down, that is how you make a mistake. That is how those things happen. And I think that's a big thing. You can't give them hope. And Kevin O'Connell chose not to. And you know what? In the game script sense, I agreed. If you were up 7 or 14, I go for it. You don't do it when you're up by 21 or 28. You kind of just got to eat it and punt, because there's so much of a mental aspect when it comes to trying to overcome that big of a lead. You can't give them positive thinking. You have to keep it leveled out. You have to keep it, for lack of a better term, negative. Those things all matter. And I thought his play calling in the second half was a little too aggressive. I love that you're trying to, hey, we're just going to put the nail in the coffin. We got to do it. But you are also moving bodies like crazy in the running game. Dog, just run the football. And you got to try and drain the clock. At that final drive where they got the field goal, Dave, that wasn't the final drive, but their final scoring drive, they threw 6 times in a row. Like, yeah, it was successful. And yeah, you're good at it. But you're also really good at running the football and spamming duo and just having Ed Ingram, Blake Brandel, and Garrett Bradbury be like, hey, go fuck shit up. Just go beat some ass. And I think you got to do it. You just got to do that. Now, it's not as simple as, hey, just run the football to run the clock. But you are running the clock by running the football. But you're also successful at running the football. So maybe just do that. And then you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I thought that they should have done a little bit more of that. I also, Dave, and I want your opinion on this, because I don't think we talked about this enough yesterday on the postcast, which I recommend you go back and watch. They spammed it too much to try and get Aaron Jones a touchdown. That I understand. It's a part of the deal. Aaron Jones is returning to Lambeau Field. You want to get him this moment where he can go Lambeau leap. It would be great for the Vikings. It'd be great for the fan base. It'd be great for Aaron Jones. The locker room would just love it. But man, they tried it too much. And I think it ended up costing them later on. Just something that I noticed. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yes. They were pushing it for the sake of the storyline versus pushing it for success. But he was efficient. You can't fault Aaron Jones. His runs were efficient. It's just they were pushing it for the storyline, and it seemed to get in the way just a bit. But hey, it sets the tone that leadership cares. Which I shouldn't say sets it, it reinforces it, that they care about players getting records, that they care about somebody returning home, that they care about the revenge game against Houston and making sure every player on the Vikings that had ever put on a Houston uniform got snaps. And that's a good thing. That builds that specialness in a team that we seem to be seeing this season. I like that. So I'll take it. And yeah, did it seem he was pushing it? Yes. But did it cost us anything in the end? No, we still won.
Yeah. And I want to talk about what Aaron says here, Dave. High percentage throws when they know we are going to run. I think there's merit to that. I think like in that 6 pass play call stretch, like I'm not against throwing the football. I actually think throwing the football is fine. I think throwing the football is a good thing in those situations because you do want to try and bury them alive. You want to try and put that final nail in the coffin. But I think there was too much of a tendency to stray away from the running game. When the running game was good, they were moving bodies. They were very physical up front. I thought they should have done more of that. It's not a semblance of, hey, you're up, run the football. It's not that. They were playing well. I want to see more of them doing the right thing strategically when it's working. And it was working. So I do think that you can do some like play action passes and like, hey, everybody remembers that boot action throw to the flat where it's usually Josh Oliver catching it and running for a bunch of yards. Yeah, you know what? Do a wide zone run, and then guess what? Boot out, toss it to Oliver, get some cheap yards. Like, hitting the easy button is not a bad thing. Hitting the easy button is a good thing. It's when you can only hit the easy button that it's bad. So I think that's an important factor here. I think it's very important to have a conversation about everything. And I just wish they, because of the success of the running game, that I wish they would have done that more. I really do. But overall, Dave, good win. Very good win. And I'm really, really excited about the direction of this team. I'm excited about how the Vikings are playing. I think Kevin O'Connell's a really good head coach and play caller on an overall basis. Like that jet sweep to Jordan Addison, perfect timing. Absolutely perfect timing to hit that. And it was an easy touchdown. The stutter and go by Addison out of the slot was a tremendous play call. And that was the first touchdown. Like, there was a lot of really, really, really good stuff from the offense, but I thought they could have handled the second half a little better on the play calling side. But it wasn't even bad. I thought it could have been better. And I think that's an important factor. It wasn't bad. Could have been better. And that's where the self-scouting will come in next week when they're on bye.
And we've got a screen game this year.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had that, and since KOC took over, that's worth a damn. It's worth a damn now. They're throwing the open backs, and there's blocking out there.
Yeah. I did think that when they brought out the tight end screen, which honestly they spammed a little too much the first 2 years. When they brought that out, I'm like, oh, what a great play call. Because they hadn't, I don't think they ran that once this year.
I don't think so.
And they ran it. And I think Oliver got like 15 yards on it. I'm like, this is great. Great stuff. I was really, really impressed. And honestly, I'm just really positive and excited about the direction of this team. I think the defense is still going to be the calling card. Darnold's going to have a game where he just every quarterback does. And I thought his 3 turnover worthy plays were something to kind of be aware of. I thought he could have played better, but I thought this quote that I got from Darnold, I'm going to pull up the article. He talked after the game yesterday, and he said this about like the mindset. Yeah, I think that's just it. I think you have to go have that mindset of like being mentally prepared. You can't think about what might happen or what has happened. You know, them coming back. You always got to continue to have that mindset of just one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. As long as we continue to have that mindset as an offense, as a whole team, you know, I think we'll be right. This team is ready for a run. This team is mentally stable. They're mentally prepared to make that run. And I get excited. Hey, we get to have brunch during the Vikings game next week. Dave, we get to have brunch.
I know. It's a morning game. And we are favored already on that one.
Are you going to put bourbon in your Bloody Mary?
No, but I put vodka and some hot sauce in my Bloody Mary.
My wife has gotten into Bloody Marias, which I would highly recommend if you find a good tequila. Because I'm sure you know, Dave, but for everybody else, a Bloody Maria is a Bloody Mary with tequila instead of vodka. High recommend. I also like a half Bloody Mary, half Bloody Caesar, which is half Bloody Mary mix, half Clamato. A lot of Bloody Mary mixes will have Clamato in them, but I think that blend is really nice. So I recommend trying that. But hey, we're going to have a full preview of the New York Jets later this week. Aaron Rodgers. I can't believe he lost to Bo Nix. That's so funny.
He said he threw bad, made some poor choices and bad throws.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be enjoyable to watch, and we are going to have a fun time. And that is our show tonight, guys. Go enjoy the doubleheader Monday Night Football. We're going to be back Wednesday night. Tomorrow at some point, we're going to have a new episode of Scolders and Spice. This is why you need to ring the bell. We're still working out some of the production stuff, which is very normal for a brand new show. Trying to just get some timing stuff right. That's why you want to have the bell on.
And Sal also has guests, and we got to work around the guests as well. So
absolutely, that's a part of the production stuff. Mm-hmm. So you're going to want to have that bell clicked so you know exactly when we're going live. Because when Dave schedules the show, it's going to give you a half-hour warning. Then it's going to tell you right when he hits that go live button. Mm-hmm. You're not going to want to miss it. And then we'll be back Wednesday. There's going to be a lot more throughout the week. And then we will be your pre-game show for the noon slate and your post-game show for the London game. And then we have a bye week, which will be pretty nice. We'll have an opportunity to kind of reflect on what the season has been so far and kind of spin it forward. Until then, when I see you Wednesday night, I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching the Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!